Crash landing on Zoria. In the far reaches of the galaxy, a small exploration ship named Elysium hurtled through the void of space. Its crew, a team of 4 humans, was on a mission to study distant planets, seeking out new knowledge and understanding of the universe. Captain Sarah Vallon, a seasoned explorer with a heart full of curiosity, led her crew with unwavering determination. Alongside her were Dr. Julian Cross, a brilliant biologist, Lieutenant Ava Torres, a skilled engineer, and Ensign Leo Chen, a young pilot with a knack for navigating the most treacherous of space routes. Their journey had been smooth thus far, but everything changed in an instant when they encountered a violent gravitational anomaly. Alarms blared as the Elysium was yanked off course, spiraling uncontrollably towards the surface of a planet they had not yet charted. Despite Leo's best efforts, the ship crash-landed on the planet's surface with a bone-rattling impact. The crew emerged from the wreckage, bruised but alive, to find themselves on a world unlike any they had ever seen. Towering mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in mist. Vast forests stretched out in every direction, and the air was thick with the scent of alien flora. But what caught their attention most was the sound of battle echoing through the trees, a violent clash between 2 factions of the planet's inhabitants. As the humans cautiously made their way through the dense undergrowth, they stumbled upon a gruesome scene. The ground was scorched and littered with the remnants of an intense skirmish. Bodies of alien beings lay scattered, their forms unfamiliar yet hauntingly reminiscent of the struggles the humans had seen on Earth. Among the fallen, they spotted movement, a lone figure, barely clinging to life. Captain Vallon knelt beside the injured alien, a young being with smooth silver skin and large expressive eyes. It was clear that this creature was in dire need of help. The humans quickly set up a makeshift medical station, utilizing their advanced technology to stabilize the alien's condition. Dr. Cross worked swiftly, his hands moving with practiced precision as he administered life-saving treatments. As the alien began to regain consciousness, the humans introduced themselves, though they were unsure if their words were understood. To their surprise, the alien, who identified himself as Sela, began to speak in a halting but recognizable version of Galactic Basic, a common language used by various species across the stars. Sela explained that he was a member of the Zorians, one of the many species inhabiting this planet, which was called Zoria. For years, Zoria had been ravaged by a brutal civil war, tearing apart families and communities as different factions vied for control of the planet's resources. Sela was a scout for one of the smaller factions, tasked with gathering intelligence when he was caught in the crossfire of a battle between 2 larger forces. As Sela spoke, his voice trembled with the weight of his experiences. He described the devastation that had befallen his world, once a place of great beauty and harmony, now reduced to a war-torn landscape where fear and hatred reigned. The humans listened intently, their hearts heavy with empathy for the suffering this young alien had endured. Captain Vallon and her crew were deeply moved by Sela's story. Despite being stranded on an unfamiliar planet with no immediate way home, they felt a profound sense of duty to help this alien and his people. They knew that they couldn't simply walk away from the suffering they had witnessed. "We can't just leave them like this," Captain Vallon said, her voice firm with resolve. "We have the skills and technology to make a difference here. We owe it to Sela and his people to do what we can." The rest of the crew nodded in agreement. Dr. Cross began to make plans to continue treating Sela, while Lieutenant Torres and Ensign Chen started working on repairing the Elysium. But even as they focused on these tasks, they all knew that their mission on Zoria had taken on a new and unexpected purpose. As the sun began to set over the alien horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the humans and Sela sat together, sharing stories of their worlds and learning from each other. Despite the differences in their species and their circumstances, a bond began to form, one built on mutual respect and a shared desire for peace. Little did they know, this bond would soon be tested in ways they could never have imagined. For on Zoria, nothing was ever simple, and the journey ahead would challenge their courage, their compassion, and their very understanding of what it meant to be human. A plan for peace. As the days passed on Zoria, the bond between the humans and Sela deepened. They spent countless hours together, learning more about the planet's history, its people, and the complexities of the conflict that had torn it apart. Sela's tale of war and suffering weighed heavily on the humans, but it also ignited a spark within them, a determination to do more than just survive on this alien world. They wanted to help. Captain Valen called a meeting with her crew and Sela in the ruins of an ancient Zorayan temple, a place that once symbolized unity among the planet's diverse species. The temple's crumbling walls were adorned with carvings that depicted scenes of harmony and cooperation, a stark contrast to the current state of Zoria. "We can't just sit by and watch this world destroy itself," Captain Valen said, her voice resolute. "We've seen firsthand what war can do, and we have the knowledge and skills to help broker peace here. We owe it to Sela and his people to try." The crew agreed, each of them driven by a sense of responsibility and compassion. Dr. Cross, who had spent his career studying the effects of conflict on biological systems, believed that peace was not just possible, but essential for the survival of Zoria's ecosystem. Lieutenant Torres, a master of engineering and systems, knew that technology could be a powerful tool for diplomacy if used wisely. Ensign Chen, though the youngest and least experienced, brought a fresh perspective and an unwavering belief in the power of unity. Sela listened intently as the humans discussed their plan. He had grown up in a world defined by conflict, where every attempt at peace had ended in failure. But as he looked at these humans, these strangers who had risked their lives to save him, he felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they could succeed where others had not. Their plan was ambitious. The humans would act as mediators, using their knowledge of diplomacy and conflict resolution to bring the warring factions to the negotiating table. They would leverage their advanced technology to communicate across the vast distances that separated the factions, ensuring that everyone had a voice in the discussions. And most importantly, they would appeal to the common desire for peace that lay buried beneath the hatred and fear. The first step was to reach out to the leaders of the two largest factions, the Zoria Prime and the Syndicate of Nyx. The Zoria Prime, led by a stern and pragmatic ruler named Varric, controlled the planet's capital city and its surrounding regions. They believed in maintaining order through strength and had been locked in a bitter struggle with the Syndicate of Nyx for decades. The Syndicate, on the other hand, was a coalition of various rebel groups united under the charismatic but ruthless leader, Caliph. They sought to overthrow the Zoria Prime, claiming to fight for the freedom of all Zoraians, though their methods were often brutal. Captain Valen sent out a message to both leaders, proposing a ceasefire and a meeting to discuss the future of Zoria. To their surprise, both Varric and Caliph responded positively, intrigued by the offer of mediation from an outside party. The humans' neutrality, coupled with their advanced technology, gave them an edge in earning the trust of both sides. The meeting was held in a neutral zone, a barren wasteland that had once been a thriving city before the war reduced it to rubble. As Varric and Caliph arrived with their respective entourages, tension hung thick in the air. Years of enmity and bloodshed had left deep scars, and neither side was willing to show weakness. But the humans were undeterred. They had studied both factions carefully, understanding their motivations, fears, and hopes. Captain Valen opened the dialogue with a simple but powerful statement. "We are not here to take sides. We are here because we believe in the possibility of peace. We believe that Zoria can be whole again, but only if you are willing to set aside your differences and work together." The discussion that followed was fraught with tension. Varric and Caliph were suspicious of each other's intentions, and their initial exchanges were filled with accusations and blame. But the humans persisted, guiding the conversation back to common ground whenever it threatened to devolve into hostility. Lieutenant Torres used her knowledge of systems and structures to propose a framework for peace, a series of small, incremental steps that both sides could agree on. These included establishing safe zones for civilians, allowing for the free flow of essential supplies, and creating a neutral council to oversee the implementation of the ceasefire. Dr. Cross emphasized the long-term benefits of peace, not just for the people of Zoria, but for the planet itself, which had suffered greatly from the prolonged conflict. Sela, too, played a crucial role. As a member of a smaller faction, he had no personal stake in the power struggle between the Zoria Prime and the Syndicate of Nyx. He spoke from the heart, sharing his experiences as a young Zorayan caught in the crossfire of a war that had brought nothing but pain and loss. His words resonated with many in the room, reminding them of the true cost of their prolonged conflict. After hours of intense negotiations, a breakthrough finally came. Varric and Caliph, worn down by the years of war and the persuasive arguments presented by the humans, agreed to a temporary ceasefire. It was a small victory, but it was a start, one that could pave the way for a more lasting peace. As the leaders left the meeting, the humans and Sela stood together, watching as the first signs of hope began to emerge on Zoria. The path to peace would be long and difficult, but they had taken the first step. And in that moment, they knew that they were no longer just survivors on a distant planet. They were part of something much greater. The humans had brought a glimmer of hope to a world on the brink of despair, and with it, the possibility of a brighter future for Zoria. The quest for the mystical crystal. The ceasefire brought a fragile calm to Zoria, but Captain Valen and her crew knew that true peace was still a distant dream. The warring factions had agreed to pause their fighting, but the deep-rooted mistrust and resentment that fueled the conflict lingered beneath the surface. As the humans continued their efforts to mediate and stabilize the situation, Sela approached them with a revelation that could change everything. They were gathered in their makeshift base, a repurposed Zorayan structure that offered some shelter from the harsh environment outside. Sela had been quiet since the ceasefire, his thoughts often distant, but today he seemed determined. His pale blue eyes were filled with a mixture of hope and fear as he began to speak. "There is something I haven't told you," Sela said, his voice trembling slightly. "A secret that has been passed down through my family for generations. It's about a mystical crystal, hidden deep within the heart of Zoria. It is said to possess immense power that could bring lasting peace to our world." The crew listened intently as Sela continued, describing the legend of the crystal. According to ancient Zorian lore, the crystal was created by the planet's first inhabitants, a highly advanced civilization that had long since vanished. The crystal was imbued with the essence of Zoria itself, capable of channeling the planet's energies to heal, protect, and unite. It was said that whoever possessed the crystal would have the power to end conflicts and bring harmony to all living beings. "But the crystal was lost ages ago," Sela explained. "Its location is known only through fragments of ancient texts and cryptic maps. Many have tried to find it, but none have succeeded. It's a dangerous journey, fraught with challenges, natural and otherwise." "But the crystal was lost ages ago," Sela explained. "Its location is known only through fragments of ancient texts and cryptic maps. Many have tried to find it, but none have succeeded. It's a dangerous journey, fraught with challenges, natural and otherwise." Captain Valen's mind raced as she considered the implications. If this crystal truly existed and could be found, it might be the key to achieving the lasting peace they all desired. But the risks were great, and the path ahead was uncertain. "We have to try," Lieutenant Torres said, her voice firm. "If this crystal is real, it could be the answer we've been looking for. We can't pass up this opportunity." Dr. Cross nodded in agreement. The potential benefits are enormous. Even if the crystal's power is more symbolic than literal, it could serve as a powerful unifying force for the people of Zoria. Ensign Chen, ever the optimist, was already imagining the possibilities. "And think of the adventure. We faced worse before. We can do this." Sela looked at them with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "I don't know what we'll find, but I do know that I couldn't do this alone. With your help, we might have a chance." And so the decision was made. The humans, along with Sela, would embark on a quest to find the mystical crystal. They gathered their supplies, relying on their advanced technology and knowledge of survival, and prepared for the journey ahead. The ancient texts that Sela had shared with them indicated that the crystal was hidden deep within a series of underground caverns, far beneath the surface of Zoria. The entrance to these caverns lay in the heart of a desolate mountain range, a region known as the Ashen Peaks. The Ashen Peaks were notorious among the Zoreans, a place of harsh winds, treacherous terrain, and deadly creatures that prowled the barren landscape. Few had ever ventured into the mountains, and even fewer had returned. But the crew was undeterred. They had faced danger before, and they were willing to do so again if it meant bringing peace to Zoria. The journey to the Ashen Peaks was arduous. The landscape grew more inhospitable as they traveled, the once lush fields giving way to rocky outcrops and jagged cliffs. The air grew thinner and colder, and the crew had to use their equipment to regulate their breathing and body temperature. Sela, who was familiar with the region, led the way, guiding them through hidden paths and avoiding the most dangerous areas. But the challenges they faced were not just physical. As they delved deeper into the mountains, they encountered strange anomalies, pockets of energy that interfered with their equipment, eerie whispers that seemed to come from the very stones, and visions that played tricks on their minds. Dr. Cross theorized that these phenomena were remnants of the ancient civilization that had created the crystal, lingering echoes of their advanced technology and knowledge. One night, as they camped in a sheltered alcove, the crew discussed the mysteries they had encountered. "This place is alive in a way that's hard to explain," Dr. Cross said, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's as if the planet itself is watching us, testing us." Captain Valen stared into the flickering flames of their campfire. "If the crystal is tied to Zoria's essence, then it makes sense that we'd encounter resistance. But we have to push forward. We're closer than ever." The next day, they reached the entrance to the caverns, a yawning chasm that plunged into darkness. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, depicting scenes of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Sela recognized some of the symbols as those of the ancient Zorean language, and with the help of the crew's translation software, they deciphered the inscriptions. "Only the worthy shall pass," Sela read aloud. "The crystal is a beacon of hope, but hope is not without cost. To claim it, one must face the trials of the earth, the mind, and the spirit." The crew exchanged determined looks. They had come too far to turn back now. With Sela leading the way, they descended into the caverns, their path illuminated by the soft glow of their lights. The air grew thick and humid, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the tunnels. The trials began almost immediately. The first challenge was a series of natural obstacles, collapsing tunnels, treacherous ledges, and sudden floods that threatened to sweep them away. But the humans' quick thinking and advanced technology helped them navigate these dangers, and they pressed on. The second trial was of the mind. As they ventured deeper into the caverns, they began to experience powerful hallucinations, visions of their worst fears and regrets. Each member of the crew was forced to confront their own inner demons, reliving moments of failure, loss, and doubt. For a time, it seemed as though the caverns might break them, but their bond with each other and their shared purpose gave them the strength to endure. Sela, too, faced his own fears, of being powerless, of failing his people, but the presence of his new friends gave him courage. Finally, they reached the last chamber, a vast cavern filled with a soft, otherworldly light. In the center of the chamber, suspended above a pool of shimmering water, was the crystal. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, glowing with a deep, inner radiance, pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. But as they approached, the crystal began to resonate with a powerful energy, filling the chamber with a blinding light. The final trial was upon them, the trial of the spirit. Each member of the crew was faced with a choice, a test of their resolve and their willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. The crystal probed their minds, seeking out their true intentions, their deepest desires, and their capacity for selflessness. In the end, It was their unity and their unwavering commitment to peace that allowed them to pass the final trial. The crystal recognized their worthiness and calmed, its light softening to a gentle glow. Captain Valen reached out, and as her hand touched the crystal, she felt a surge of warmth and energy, as if the essence of Zoria itself was flowing through her. The crystal had been claimed, but its true power was yet to be revealed. The crew knew that their journey was far from over, but with the crystal in their possession, they had the means to bring lasting peace to Zoria. As they made their way back to the surface, the weight of their accomplishments settled in. They had overcome immense challenges, faced their deepest fears, and emerged stronger than ever. And now, with the mystical crystal in hand, they held the future of Zoria in their grasp. The real test would be in how they used it. The crystal's power. The journey back from the caverns was much quicker, though no less intense, as the humans and Seller carried with them the mystical crystal, glowing softly with an inner light. The crew felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, knowing that the crystal had the potential to change the fate of Zoria. They had faced many trials to claim it, and now the time had come to unleash its power and fulfill the promise of peace. As they emerged from the ashen peaks, the landscape around them seemed to change, as if the planet itself was responding to the presence of the crystal. The harsh winds that had battered them on their ascent were now gentle breezes, and the once barren ground showed signs of life, small, delicate flowers beginning to bloom in the cracks of the rocks. It was as if Zoria was awakening, sensing the potential for a new beginning. Captain Valen held the crystal carefully, feeling its warmth spread through her body. She could sense the immense power within it, a force that was both awe-inspiring and humbling. Seller walked beside her, his eyes wide with wonder and hope. "This is it," he whispered. "The crystal will heal our world." When they arrived back at the makeshift base, the Zorayan factions were still in a tenuous ceasefire, but tensions were high. Rumors of the humans' quest had spread, and many were skeptical, thinking it nothing more than a desperate gamble. Others feared that the crystal's power might be too great, that it could bring destruction as easily as peace. The humans knew they needed to act swiftly to prevent the fragile truce from unraveling. They gathered the leaders of the warring factions in a neutral area, a once sacred meeting place now scarred by years of conflict. The air was thick with unease as the leaders, each representing their own interests and mistrustful of the others, faced one another across the clearing. Captain Valen stood at the center, the crystal held aloft. Its light cast a soft glow over the assembled leaders, illuminating their faces and highlighting the wariness and pain etched into their features. "We stand at a crossroads," Valen began, her voice strong and clear. "This crystal has the power to heal, to unite, and to bring lasting peace. But it requires all of us to work together, to set aside our differences and embrace a new future for Zoria." The leaders murmured among themselves, their expressions a mix of skepticism and hope. They had heard similar words before, promises of peace that had been broken time and time again. But there was something different this time, something in the way the crystal's light seemed to reach into their very souls, stirring emotions they had long buried. Salah stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "I have seen what this crystal can do," he said, addressing his fellow Zorayans. "It is not just a tool or a weapon, it is a symbol of our shared destiny. We have suffered so much, lost so many, but this is our chance to make things right, to honor those we've lost by building a future where our children can live in peace." The leaders were silent, their eyes fixed on the crystal. For a moment, it seemed as though they might refuse, too entrenched in their old ways to embrace change. But then, one by one, they nodded, their expressions softening. The promise of peace, of a future without fear and bloodshed, was too powerful to resist. With a deep breath, Captain Valen activated the crystal. It pulsed with a brilliant light, brighter than the sun, and a wave of energy rippled outward from its core. The energy washed over the gathered leaders, over the war-torn landscape, and across the entire planet. As the energy spread, it touched every corner of Zoria, bringing with it a profound sense of healing. The scars of battle, Burnt forests, shattered cities, and poisoned rivers began to mend. Trees that had been reduced to ash sprouted new leaves, and flowers bloomed in fields that had once been barren. The very air seemed to shimmer with new life, and the skies cleared, revealing a bright, hopeful horizon. But the crystal's power did more than heal the land. It reached into the hearts and minds of every Zorayan, bridging the divides that had fueled the conflict for so long. Old grudges, long-held resentments, and fears that had driven them to war melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of unity and purpose. The crystal's energy brought clarity, allowing them to see one another not as enemies, but as fellow beings, each with their own dreams, hopes, and fears. In the days that followed, the warring factions began to work together, setting aside their weapons and joining forces to rebuild their world. The leaders, once enemies, now sat together to discuss the future of Zoria, guided by a shared vision of peace and cooperation. The humans played a crucial role in these discussions, offering their knowledge and experience to help shape the new Zorian society. Sela, once a lone voice for peace, found himself at the center of this new era, a symbol of hope and reconciliation. His bravery and determination had inspired his people, and now, with the crystal's power, he was able to help guide them toward a brighter future. The bond he had formed with the humans had also deepened, a testament to the strength of unity across worlds and species. As the planet healed, so too did its people. The ceasefire became a lasting peace, and the once fractured world of Zoria began to flourish. The crystal was placed in a newly built temple, where it could continue to radiate its healing energy, a constant reminder of the power of unity and the sacrifices that had been made to achieve it. Captain Valen and her crew watched with pride as the Zorayans embraced their new future. They had come to Zoria as outsiders, but they were leaving as friends, having played a vital role in bringing peace to a world in desperate need. As they prepared to depart, Sela stood with them, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You've given us more than just peace. You've given us hope." Captain Valen smiled, placing a hand on Sela's shoulder. "It wasn't just us, Sela. You were the one who believed in a better future, even when no one else did. This peace is as much your victory as it is ours." With a final farewell, the humans boarded their ship, the crystal's light still shining in the distance as they lifted off from the surface of Zoria. As they soared into the stars, they knew that they had made a difference, not just for one planet, but for the entire galaxy. For the story of Zoria and the power of the crystal would spread, inspiring other worlds to seek their own paths to peace and unity. And wherever they went, the humans would carry with them the memory of a world healed, a people united, and the hope that one day, all conflicts could be resolved through compassion, understanding, and the power of a shared dream. The looming threat. The skies over Zoria, once torn apart by conflict, now stretched vast and serene, reflecting the newfound peace that had taken root across the planet. The crystal's healing energy continued to radiate, fostering an unprecedented era of unity and cooperation among the Zorayan factions. The once fractured world was rebuilding, and hope blossomed in the hearts of its people. But as Zoria thrived, whispers began to spread, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, but growing louder with each passing day. These whispers spoke of a dark force, gathering strength in the far reaches of space, a threat unlike anything the galaxy had faced before. The rumors were vague, fragmented, carried by traders and travelers who had ventured into the outer systems. They spoke of entire worlds falling silent, of fleets vanishing without a trace, and of an ominous presence that seemed to defy description. Captain Valen and her crew had heard these whispers as well, and the unease they felt was impossible to ignore. After all they had accomplished on Zoria, the thought of a new threat looming on the horizon was deeply troubling. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was fragile, and the arrival of a new enemy could shatter it in an instant. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the land in a warm, golden glow, Captain Valen stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city of Siran. The city, once a battleground, was now a beacon of hope, its spires reaching toward the sky like the fingers of a reborn world. She could see the Zoreans moving through the streets, their faces lit with the joy of a people who had finally found peace. Sela joined her, his expression thoughtful. "I've been hearing the same rumors," he said quietly, his voice tinged with worry. "If they're true, we can't let this new threat undo everything we've accomplished." Valen nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "We won't, but we need to be prepared. We can't wait for the danger to come to us. We need to confront it head-on." The two of them, along with the rest of Valen's crew, began to plan. The first step was to gather more information about the mysterious threat. They needed to know what they were up against before they could take action. The humans' advanced technology, combined with Zoria's newly unified resources, would be crucial in this effort. Sela took the lead in organizing a reconnaissance mission. Drawing on his deep connections with the Zorian people, he recruited a group of skilled pilots and scouts, individuals who had once fought on opposite sides but were now united by a common purpose. They would venture into the far reaches of space, seeking out the source of the rumors and gathering whatever intelligence they could. As the scouts prepared to depart, Valen and her crew worked tirelessly to fortify Zoria's defenses. They knew that if this dark force was as powerful as the rumors suggested, it would take more than just their small crew to stand against it. They needed to ensure that Zoria could protect itself if the worst came to pass. In the days that followed, the tension on Zoria grew. The once peaceful atmosphere was now tinged with a sense of urgency as everyone worked to prepare for the unknown threat. The Zorean leaders, who had recently been enemies, now met regularly to coordinate their efforts, demonstrating the strength of the unity that had been forged by the crystal's power. Weeks passed, and the scouts began to return, each with stories more troubling than the last. They spoke of entire star systems that had gone dark, of civilizations that had simply vanished without a trace. The dark force, it seemed, was no mere rumor. It was real, and it was drawing closer. The most chilling report came from a scout who had ventured into the distant Anderan system, a place known for its thriving trade routes and bustling spaceports. The scout described finding the entire system empty, its once busy planets reduced to lifeless husks. No signs of battle, no wreckage, just silence, as if life had simply been erased. Sela and Valen listened intently as the scout recounted his experience. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," he said, his voice shaking. "There's no trace of what happened, no clues, just emptiness." Valen's expression was grim. "This isn't just a new enemy, it's something far more dangerous. Whatever this force is, it doesn't just conquer, it annihilates." The realization sent a shiver down Sela's spine. The thought of Zoria, a planet that had just begun to heal, facing such a threat was unbearable. But he also knew that they couldn't afford to back down. They had to confront this darkness, or everything they had worked for would be lost. With the scouts' reports in hand, Valen and her crew devised a plan. They would take the fight to the dark force before it reached Zoria, using the element of surprise to their advantage. It was a risky move, but they had no other choice. The fate of Zoria, and possibly the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Before they departed, Valen addressed the Zorian leaders one last time. "We don't know what we're up against," she said, "but we do know that we can't face it alone. We need to stand together as one if we're going to survive. Whatever happens out there, know that we're fighting for the future of Zoria and for the peace we've all worked so hard to achieve." Sela, now a symbol of hope for his people, stood beside her, his voice steady as he added, "We've already shown what we can accomplish when we're united. This threat is unlike anything we've ever faced, but I believe in us. I believe that together we can overcome it." With those words, the humans and their Zorian allies prepared for the most daunting mission of their lives. They would venture into the unknown, facing an enemy shrouded in mystery and darkness. But they would do so with the knowledge that they were fighting for something greater than themselves, a future of peace, not just for Zoria, but for all the worlds that lay in the path of the looming threat. As their ships lifted off, heading toward the far reaches of space, the people of Zoria watched with bated breath. They knew that the battle ahead would be difficult, and that victory was far from certain, but they also knew that they had chosen the right path, and that no matter what happened, they would face the future together. The journey into the darkness had begun, and with it, the next chapter in the story of Zoria. A story of hope, courage, and the unyielding strength of unity in the face of an unimaginable threat. The final battle. The horizon of Zoria darkened as the ominous fleet of the Dark Force emerged from the void, their arrival casting a shadow over the once peaceful planet. The skies, once filled with the vibrant hues of sunrise, were now a tumultuous swirl of black clouds and crackling energy. The tension that had been building for weeks erupted as alarms blared throughout the cities, signaling the beginning of the battle for Zoria's survival. Captain Valen stood at the command center of her ship, the Nova Dawn, her eyes fixed on the colossal enemy fleet that loomed ahead. The reconnaissance had confirmed their worst fears. The Dark Force was a relentless, ancient entity, consuming everything in its path. It was not just an enemy, it was a force of nature, a living embodiment of destruction. All units, prepare for combat. Valen's voice rang out with a calm authority, masking the weight of the moment. Around her, the crew moved with practiced precision, their faces set with determination. They had prepared for this day, and now they would put everything on the line. On the surface of Zoria, the newly united factions rallied their forces, led by Sela. The Zorian warriors, once enemies, now stood together as one, their ranks bolstered by the humans who had come to their aid. The crystal's power had given them hope, but it was their unity that gave them strength. Sela, clad in armor that symbolized both his people and the new alliance, addressed the gathered troops. "This is the moment we've been preparing for," Sela began, his voice echoing across the assembly. "We face a foe that seeks to destroy all that we hold dear. But we are not the same divided world we once were. We are united, and together, we will show this dark force that Zoria will not be conquered." A chorus of cheers erupted from the crowd, a fierce roar of defiance that carried across the battlefield. The Zorians, with their newly strengthened bonds, were ready to fight for their home, for their future. As the Dark Fleet drew closer, the first wave of enemy fighters broke through the atmosphere, their sleek, ominous forms cutting through the sky like daggers. The humans and Zorians responded in kind, launching a barrage of defensive fire. Explosions lit up the heavens as the two forces collided, the sound of battle reverberating across the planet. Valen's ship led the charge, its advanced weaponry unleashing a torrent of energy blasts that tore through the enemy ranks. But the Dark Force was unlike anything they had encountered before. Its ships moved with an eerie, almost unnatural grace, evading attacks with impossible precision. It was as if the darkness itself guided them, bending reality to its will. On the ground, Sela led the defense of Siran, the city that had become the heart of the new Zoria. The streets were a chaotic battleground, with Zorian and human soldiers fighting side by side against waves of dark warriors. These invaders were not like any other enemy. They were faceless, their bodies shrouded in shadow, their movements fluid and relentless. They seemed to be made of the very darkness they served, and their touch drained the life from everything they encountered. Sela fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope, his blade cutting through the shadowy figures with precision. Around him, his people fought with equal valor, driven by the knowledge that this battle would determine the fate of their world. But for every enemy they struck down, more seemed to take their place, an unending tide of darkness threatening to overwhelm them. As the battle raged, Valen realized that conventional tactics would not be enough. The Dark Force was too powerful, too relentless. They needed to change the tide, to find a way to turn the very nature of the battle against their enemy. And then she remembered the crystal, the mystical artifact that had united Zoria and healed its wounds. The crystal's energy, she murmured, a plan forming in her mind. It's our only chance. She quickly relayed her idea to Sela, who was battling fiercely on the ground. Sela, we need to amplify the crystal's power, she said over the comms. If we can harness it, we might be able to turn the darkness against itself. Sela didn't hesitate. He knew the crystal's power was vast, but untested in such a way. Still, it was their only hope. I'll make it happen, he replied, determination in his voice. Sela and a select group of warriors fought their way to the temple where the crystal was kept. The journey was perilous, the streets littered with the remains of the battle. When they finally reached the crystal, its glowing form pulsed with a gentle light, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. As Sela approached the crystal, he could feel its energy resonating with him, a deep, ancient power that seemed to respond to his presence. He placed his hands on its surface, and a surge of energy shot through him, connecting him to the very heart of Zoria. The crystal's light began to intensify, growing brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. Now, Valen's voice crackled over the comms. Direct its energy towards the dark fleet. With a deep breath, Sela focused all his will on the crystal, channeling its power through his body and out into the world. The crystal responded, its energy erupting in a massive wave of light that spread across the battlefield. The dark warriors recoiled as the light touched them, their forms dissolving into nothingness, as if the very essence of their being was being unraveled. In the skies above, the dark fleet faltered. The ships, once invincible, now seemed to waver, their forms flickering as the crystal's energy reached them. Valen seized the opportunity, ordering her fleet to concentrate their fire on the weakened enemy. One by one, the dark ships began to fall, consumed by the very light they sought to extinguish. On the ground, the tide of battle shifted dramatically. The Zorian and human forces, inspired by the sight of the darkness retreating, fought with renewed vigor. The shadowy invaders, once so fearsome, now crumbled under the onslaught, their connection to the dark force severed by the crystal's power. As the last of the dark warriors fell, a stunned silence descended over the battlefield. The enemy was gone, their presence erased as if they had never existed. The crystal's light slowly dimmed, returning to its normal, gentle glow. Sela, exhausted but triumphant, stood before the crystal, his heart pounding. They had done it. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But the cost had been high, and the scars of this battle would remain with them forever. Valen's voice came through the comms, filled with relief. "We did it, Sela. The darkness is gone." Sela nodded, though he knew the victory was not just his. It was the result of their unity, their willingness to fight together for a common cause. Zoria had faced annihilation and had survived, not because of one person or one power, but because of the strength they had found in each other. As the people of Zoria began to gather, the realization of their victory slowly sinking in, Sela and Valen exchanged a glance. The battle was over, but the future of Zoria was just beginning. Together, they had forged a new path, one that would lead their people into a brighter, more hopeful future. The final battle had been won, but the legacy of that victory would live on, a testament to the power of unity, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a world that had refused to surrender to the darkness. A new dawn. The first rays of dawn broke over Zoria, casting a golden hue across the landscape that had been the site of so much turmoil. The battle was over, and the world, once torn by conflict and threatened by darkness, now basked in a newfound peace. The crystal, which had been the key to their salvation, stood in the heart of Siran, its gentle glow a constant reminder of the power they had unleashed and the unity they had achieved. In the days following the final battle, the people of Zoria began to rebuild. The scars of war, though deep, were not insurmountable. With the help of the humans, who had become more than allies, now cherished friends, the cities were restored, the lands healed, and a new spirit of cooperation flourished across the planet. Sela, now a symbol of hope and leadership, stood before a gathering of Zorians and humans in the grand plaza of Siran. The air was filled with anticipation, as this day marked not only the end of a dark chapter, but the beginning of a new one. "We have witnessed the worst of times," Sela began, his voice carrying through the crowd, "but we have also seen the best of ourselves. United, we faced an enemy that sought to destroy us, and together we prevailed. Today, we stand on the threshold of a new era for Zoria, an era of peace, of unity, and of hope." A cheer erupted from the crowd, a joyous celebration of their hard-won victory. The humans who stood among the Zorians shared in this moment, their faces reflecting the deep bonds they had forged in the fires of battle. Captain Valen, who had led the human contingent with unwavering resolve, stepped forward to address the gathering. Her usual stern demeanor softened by the emotion of the moment, she spoke with a heartfelt sincerity. "Zoria has become more than just a distant world to us," Valen said, her eyes sweeping over the assembly. "It has become a part of us, just as we have become a part of you. The challenges we face together have shown us the strength that comes from unity, and the friendships we formed will forever be a part of our story." As she spoke, Valen's thoughts drifted to the moments they had shared, the battles fought, the sacrifices made, and the quiet moments of camaraderie that had sustained them. The humans had come to Zoria as strangers, but they would leave as heroes, their names forever etched in the history of this world. The time had come for the humans to return to Earth. The repairs to their ship had been completed, and though their journey on Zoria was ending, the memories they carried with them would last a lifetime. In a solemn ceremony, the humans bid farewell to their Zorian friends. There were tears, laughter, and promises to stay in touch across the vast distances of space. Sela and Valen exchanged a final handshake, a gesture that spoke of mutual respect and the deep bond they had formed. "Thank you, Valen," Sela said, his voice thick with emotion, "for everything. Zoria will never forget what you and your people have done for us." "And we'll never forget Zoria," Valen replied, her gaze lingering on the alien world that had come to mean so much to her. "This isn't goodbye, it's just the beginning of a new chapter." As the humans boarded their ship, the Nova Dawn, the Zorians gathered to watch them depart. The ship's engines roared to life, and with a final echoing cheer, the Zorians bid farewell to their human allies. The Nova Dawn ascended into the sky, breaking through the atmosphere and into the vastness of space. As they left Zoria behind, the humans felt a mixture of sadness and fulfillment. They had accomplished something extraordinary, not just by surviving, but by helping to reshape a world and forging bonds that transcended the boundaries of species and stars. On the bridge of the ship, Valen gazed out at the stars, her thoughts drifting back to the journey they had just completed. The experience had changed her, just as it had changed all of them. She knew that the story of Zoria would be told on Earth, a tale of bravery, unity, and the power of friendship. It was a story that would inspire generations to come. As the ship continued its journey home, Earth came into view, a blue jewel against the black canvas of space. The sight filled the crew with a sense of anticipation. They were returning home, but they were not the same people who had left. They had grown, learned, and found a deeper understanding of what it meant to be part of a larger galaxy. Back on Zoria, life continued to thrive. The lessons learned from the humans became part of the Zorian culture, a guiding principle for the new era they were building. The crystal remained a symbol of their unity and the power that had saved them, a beacon of hope for future generations. Sela, now a revered leader, often found himself at the temple where the crystal resided. He would sit in quiet contemplation, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The humans were gone, but their legacy lived on, woven into the very fabric of Zoria's future. The new dawn on Zoria was not just the beginning of a new day, it was the beginning of a new age. An age where the lessons of the past guided the way forward, where peace and unity were more than just ideals. They were the foundation upon which their world would be built. And so, as the sun rose over Zoria, casting its light across the land, the planet looked forward to a future filled with hope, knowing that even in the darkest of times, there was always the promise of a new dawn.